Hey, what's going on, everybody? How you doing? Archbishop Wayne Jr. here. If you feel like giving and donating, it's on this side, Bishop Wayne Jr. Cash App. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you guys. I'm gonna turn this music off, but just it's a nice little beat, right? God bless you all. It's your friend, it's your brother, Archbishop Wayne Daniels Jr. Appreciate you for being here today. Thank you for joining me. I really look forward to this conversation. So please don't be shy. Make sure you comment. I'm going to share your comments here on this, and we're going to talk about something very, very interesting today. So again, as you know, I'm here in my studio working some things out. So if you see me looking down and up and all that kind of stuff, I got my screen here. My phone is actually doing this, and I got buttons to push and make sure everything is working. So, but God bless you. Grace and peace to you from God our Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. We thank God for the opportunity to share this with you. And we serve a wonderful and great God, right? We are part of what we call a victorious kingdom, and we have a world without end. So we thank God for that. Again, God bless you. Thank you for being here. So let's get started with today's discussion. If you are here, if you can hear me clearly and you can see me well, then just put it in the comments. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Put it in the comments below. Yeah, let me know where you're watching from so I know where you are, who you are, and kind of get a gauge of who I am chatting with. Please, again, like this, share this, okay? This is going to be some very valuable information for churches, especially in this season. We know last year there was a big uproar about churches shutting down because of COVID and being shut down and people feeling like they were helpless and hopeless and stuff like that. So I'm going to be breaking down some stuff on what we can do in the future. Man, these glasses are giving me, you see this? Putting indents in my face. I'm going to share with you some things that you can do as a pastor, as a minister, things that the church. Hey, what's going on, man? Nah, it's not the Samsung. Actually, this is this is actually my iPhone. I'm going to get a Samsung again. I don't want to start that debate right now. What's going on, my brother Kyle? Hey, God bless you, man. Good to see you, man. Yeah, and I'm gonna get you on live so we can chat about some stuff too, because we have a lot to discuss and to talk about. So God bless you again. Please like this, share this, tell your friends and family to come. If you know any ministers, please tag them. They need to see this information. They need to understand what's going on. Yes, dear. I'm live. Yes, my kids are wonderful for that. Yes, I'm live. So what's the matter? You want some of my chocolate covered almonds? Have like 5. That's it. Have 5. See, they come asking for stuff. Anyway, so let's get into this conversation. Okay, let's get started. Again, if you would like to donate to our ministry, you can do so right here, Bishop Wayne Jr. at Cash App. And it would be much appreciated. You'll help us do many things. In fact, tomorrow we're having our first in-person service for Epiphany Church here in Long Island. So anything that you give or donate will go to that and the outreach that we're going to be doing. And a lot of that outreach has to do with this stuff we're going to be discussing today right now. So let's get into the discussion. Let's first talk about 501c3s. Let me back up. The topic of discussion is about 501c3 and the power of the church, right? The authority, the power, what the church can and cannot do with the 501c3, but that starts somewhere else. It starts with legality and lawful. So there's a difference between legal and lawful, right? And there's a lot of these definitions, unfortunately, have been changed over time. So I want to be very clear. Lawful has not changed. What is lawful is what is lawful. Law has to deal with truth and fact. Legality does not. Most things that are legal have to do with assumption and presumption. It's not truth and fact. And the reality is, even when you go into court, there are something that are called rules of the court, and truth and facts are not even argued in a lot of these courts. What are argued in the courts is the legality of something based on hearsay, assumption, and presumption. And so there are a lot of things that are done that are assumed or presumed. And if you don't correct the assumption or the presumption, it is taken as truth or fact. So law is dynamic in that sense when it comes to a legal sense. And I'm telling you this stuff. No, I didn't take the bar exam, but I have studied law a long time. I've studied a lot of law. I've read a lot of law books. I understand how the system works. And as much as I'm telling you right now, all of this stuff can be looked up and researched. This can be discovered by you if you go and read some books. I do have a group, actually. It's a Facebook group. It's called the Wealth Creation Society. You can look us up on Facebook. It's called Wealth Creation Society. It has to do with fixing your status. It has to do with understanding your rights and how to establish wealth, right? How to build wealth. And we're doing it without actually taking from other people, because the government has a lot of the idea of wealth transfer means taking from someone else and then what they call evenly dispersing it, even though that's not actually what happens. So let's get into this, but it has to do with status. So first of all, the status of the church, and something that it's actually been made a law. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it is something that's an act of Congress. They actually put into law that the Bible is the Word of God. I need you to be very clear. It was actually in 1982. I forgot the actual law. In 1982, Congress enacted an act that made sure that the Bible was on record as being the Word of God. This is legal. This is lawful. The Bible and the laws in the Bible are considered law. And I don't know if y'all understand that. I don't know if you understand the implications of that. I don't know if you understand how deep that really runs. I'm telling you, you're going to want to share this with your friends. If they're ministers, pastors, anybody who calls himself a fivefold or fourfold minister, share this with them, because they need to hear this information. This is in the season that the world is in right now. Some people like what's going on and they're happy. I don't necessarily understand, but that's their prerogative. There are others who are not. And I'm going to get into actually patriotism in this conversation as well, because we have to be very careful as Christians really getting into being patriotic and stuff like that, because we're always supposed to have a nation, right? We talk victorious kingdom. There is a kingdom nation. And that's where our patriotism should be directed at. But I'll explain why in a second. So there is a law that the Bible is the Word of God, and the Bible is law. God's words are law. So what God says is lawful, period. And if you obey what God says, then you are in right standing with the law. The word legal means, according to Black's Law Dictionary, you got to get some older versions. You can't take the new versions, guys. And what we need to understand about law is, like I said earlier, it is dynamic, or what they call legality. It is dynamic. That means it moves, it shifts, it changes. That doesn't mean that it loses its original understanding. So what happens is there are several layers to this thing. There are 3 different jurisdictions. Did you know that? There are three different jurisdictions that we have, that we operate under. The highest one is the air, the middle one is the land, and the lowest one is the sea. So you have the air and the sky is above the land is above the sea. And we have these 3 tiers of jurisdictions that we actually operate under here in the world, in America and around the world. It's ecclesiastical law, then there's property rights and law, and then there's admiralty maritime law. And those are all 3 different jurisdictions. And the church is actually the highest jurisdiction. It's called the air. When God made us, humanity, He made us to be the stewards of all of them, right? Of the birds of the air, of the animals and the creatures walking, and those in the sea. We have been given dominion as man over those things, right? And so what ends up happening in what they call law, but it's really the legal game and the legal system, is they've created their own definitions for these same words. They've created a whole new system of operation. So they understand how God has these 3 tiers of law: celestial, telestial, and terrestrial. We have these 3 levels, and they created their own version. So they took what God created and made a lesser version that they created, and then found a way to trick people to go under their version. So there's a difference between someone who is a natural human being, born, a man or a woman, as we would call mankind. And there's a difference in that person or that reality and a citizen. So we understand that God made law. We live by God's laws, right? There's the law of nature, as we call it. These things are actually what God established, and the government acknowledges and respects and honors that. But then the government created its own type of law, which they call statutes, codes, and policies. I'm telling you, this is after 10 years of studying law. These things are real. And there is case law and case studies that I can show you and can tell you that will prove everything that I'm saying to you. I'm not telling you anything that's hearsay. I'm not telling you anything that's just, oh, he's a, some people think that, oh, he's a sovereign citizen and he's just talking about, no, this is not that. I'm telling you stuff that works in court. I'm telling you stuff that works in the world when it comes down to things. So we're going to specifically make this about the 501c3, but I had to give you some backstory. So what happens is there's God's law. There's God's church and what he established. And that church is supreme. It is the highest. And then there's man's government, which is the next one, which is superior. And then there's the lowest kind of law, right? So we have these three levels of law. God's law is the highest, then what man creates, and then there's the next tier down. So what ends up happening is, man being smart decides, I'm going to create my own laws, my own government, and those things actually, for lack of a better word, they undo God's laws. We don't want to think it like that. We got to be honest with ourselves. We got to be honest. And we have to be willing to look face first, head into the dragon, and realize that the law or things that are considered legal are not necessarily in line or in tune with God's law. We know that God would hates prostitution, yet prostitution is legal in certain instances. So they can't be the same. Legality is not the same as lawful. So just because something is legal does not mean it is lawful, right? These things have to do with commerce. These things have to do with exchange of money, all this kind of stuff. He said, what you saying? What's you saying, brother? Facts, my brother. Many of them are crooked in its creation, but rules of the land nonetheless. See, and they are. But they're lesser rules. And this is what we need to understand, is that just because something is legal does not mean that is the way God intended it. That just means that's the system at work. The system is going to allow this, so they regulate it. They dictate how it works and operates and who can operate in or out of it. Like, they can tell you whether or not you can do this or not. So when it comes to the mandates and stuff, or shutting down churches when it came to COVID, all this kind of stuff has to deal with whether something is lawful or legal. Now, what happens with the 501c3 is it takes the church out of the lawful realm of the air, ecclesiastical jurisdiction, where God is the one who establishes the law. A 501c3 takes the church from this and it brings it down to the level of the land. It brings it down to a level to the land, which man creates its own laws to govern things. So when a church chooses to be a 501c3 and you go and register, first of all, the church existed before government. And before any government. Even the Roman, we talk about Jesus established the church during the time of Rome in the Roman government, and he established it, and and so Rome was there first. Excuse me. No, the church existed before Rome, before Jesus came. In fact, we know that the Lamb was slain from the foundation of the world. God always had his church. There was a specific time that the church was thrust into time, into the world, right? There was a time where oh, hey, God bless you. God bless you. Please share it. Like it, share it. Let somebody know we on, because I'm breaking down some stuff. All right. Reverend Sandra, God bless you. Thank you. Share it. Let some people know, because we're about to break this down. So what ends up happening is the church has been taken out of ecclesiastical jurisdiction of the air, which is the highest, supreme, the ultimate law. And it has been lowered to a status of under man's governance. So when we decided, again, this happened with Johnson back in the day in what was it, 50s or whatever else, he established something called the 501c3. Before that, there was something that existed, was called a 508c1a. Now, I talk about this. You can go online and find free church and stuff like that. It's a 508c1a, whatever else. And I that's probably the best. Some call it a corporate soul. Some call it this, that, the third. But ultimately, it is a 508c1a. Okay? Now, there's different things that you can do with a 508c1a, but that's still not the end of it. So let's be clear. If a church has registered as a 501c3, you have willfully lowered the status of a church from the highest lawful place and brought it down. So that means that something that was once operated under God's law is no longer operating under God's law. It is now operating under the law of the land. It has been brought down a level of operation. Now it's being governed by the government that created the entity. So when you say I have a church and it's 501c3, that's not a church that God created. It's a church that government created because they created the 501c3. So if you have a church that exists under the 501c3, your church is governed by the laws of the land. Point blank, period. This is why pastors have, in the last several months, been arrested for having church during COVID. When there are CDC recommendations and guidelines and all this other kind of stuff like that, these pastors and churches have been shut down because they are regulated by the laws of the land. Now, I know there are some who believe that because Romans 13 says we're supposed to obey and these things and that things and whatever else, y'all don't understand law. You don't understand how these things work. You are operating outside of a realm of understanding. You're ignorant of these things, and that's okay. It's not okay to stay ignorant. It's not okay to be indignant to hearing new information so that way you can do something about it. And I have pastors that come at me and they argue and fuss and fight with me because I'm saying these things, but I'm trying to enlighten you a little bit. I'm trying to tell you what you actually have available, what is at your disposal, so that way the church can be more powerful, especially in this day and time. It does no use or no good to anyone to put your head in the sand and say that doesn't apply to me. Oh, yes, it does. Because let you do certain things, and somebody's going to come knocking on your door eventually. And that's the thing about it. We've gotten complacent. We've set up the 501c3s. We've done all these things. And it's just by the grace of God that the government hasn't really come down on churches. But I don't see that lasting a lot longer. With the way things are going right now, they're going to start applying pressure because they can. And they threaten you with, you're going to lose this right and this privilege and this benefit. Not right, but these benefits. Because what happens is this. Up here at God's law, this level, God's law, human beings have rights given to us by God. When you come down underneath the government, you no longer have rights. You have what's called benefits and privileges. This is all throughout the books. You have benefits and privileges of following their statutes, their codes, and their policies. All of these words mean things. Right? What's going on now? I'm going to check out this comment. It's a long comment. Let's see what we get. So I don't want to jump your thoughts, so I want to wait until you mention. Hopefully I can shed some light in the conversation. I looked at the definition of both financial terms, and such a shame too. C3 is a crooked system, stops churches and other types of organizations from lobbying. Exactly. But the C4 group, ironically, our social care groups, can lobby. What a twisted thing of truth of life. See, look, man, I'm telling you, I know what I'm talking about, bro. People don't want to admit that I know what I'm talking about, but I know what I'm talking about. The 501c3, they have limited. You don't have free speech as a church if you're a 501c3. You don't have representation in government if you're a 501c3 because you don't exist. Government created you. In their mind, they created your entity. And as much as you might think we're free and we're a church and all that, that's not how they look at it. That's not how they view it. That's not how the world. So if you go into court, it's a wrap. This is why, man, there's so much to get into. There's so much to get into. But I want to scratch the surface right here. He said, when they use a verse like that, it's so out of balance. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm trying to get y'all to understand, and I hope, like I said, I hope it's going to help somebody a little bit because God been revealing some stuff to me. I've been seeing some things, and it's not going to be looking good in a little while. And if the church doesn't correct its status, and I say that very, very purposefully, we have been given a status by God to be the supreme rulers of all things, right? Humanity has been. And that humanity, when we come together in Jesus Christ, we become the church. If the church is operating down here, who is actually dictating what's going on up here? Who is dictating what's happening up here? Who is actually living out what's happening up here? Nobody. We don't have rights. You don't have rights so this is why churches can be sued. This is why all this stuff has happened, because churches decided to accept a lower status. So if somebody doesn't like what I say as a pastor, they can sue me if I have a 501c3. Why? Because that created a separate entity. Now let's deal with the IRS real quick. Because I know some people who are going to shout me down and say, well, it doesn't matter if you register or not. The IRS automatically views you as a 501c3. And that, like I started this whole conversation out, that's because the legality, the legal system operates under assumption and presumption and hearsay. So if they say you're automatically viewed as a 501c3 and you don't correct them and say, no, I am not a 501c3, you automatically get put under 501c3 as a church. Period. It's assumption, presumption, and hearsay. So if you don't tell the government, if you don't tell them that I am not a 501c3, you are automatically assumed, presumed, and if they don't hear from you, basically it's called hearsay. They make up a status for you to have, which is 501c3. That's the status. Let's talk about it. It says, and you know what's funny, if we're going to use the Bible as a source on government respect, consider this. Jesus told us to give Caesar. Thank you. We don't even understand it though. Because I know what you're talking about. The church has been out of balance on who they're really giving to. Period. He said, give to Caesar what's Caesar's and give to God what's God's. So what happens is if Caesar gives us a church, guess what? That church belongs to Caesar. We don't want to talk about it like this. And I know people that don't agree with me or they don't like it when I say stuff like this, but this is the reality. If Caesar gave us a church, it is Caesar's church. And this is what started to happen. In many countries, church became a legal entity. And when a church becomes a legal entity, there's a few churches that did it right and they got some stuff wrong anyway, but I'm going to go into that in a few moments. But when the church becomes a legal entity under the government, it is not the same thing as an ecclesiastical governing body. It is not the same thing as following God's law. Remember, Congress enacted an act that made the Bible the highest form of law. And said the Bible is God's word. It is the highest form of law. But what they did when they created the 501c3 is they said, we're going to automatically assume that if you start a church in America, you are a 501c3. We're going to treat you as such. We're going to give you the rights and benefits of a 501c3. But you also have the same limitations as a 501c3. So what we have to do is we have to actually correct our status. Now, I'm actually doing this personally. This stuff that's happening personally, that I have a small group of people that we sharing this stuff with, and I'm on this journey for real. This is not sovereign citizen. This is not like people want to call you conspiracy theorists. And I'm telling you from what I understand at law. Thank you. He says, be in, it's too true. Be in the world, not of the world. And when it comes to church operations, it's time we rethink these things. Thank you, my brother. Amen, and thank you. We don't get our charter from the government. We don't get our charter from anything. We get our charter from coming together and establishing something that we call a trust. The highest form of law is trust law. Ecclesiastical trust law. So you know who got it right? I know y'all don't like them, but it is what it is. They got this part right. The Catholic Church. The Roman Catholic Church is a sovereign nation state. It is its own government. It has its own army. It has its own bank. It has its own currency. And that church is established through a trust. What we see in the Bible, why they call God's law the highest law, is because it's considered, they saw it and they said, this is trust law. We need to take what God did and we can manipulate it to work for us so we become God and we can create things. These people are slick. They're slick. They're smart. They're brilliant. And they've tricked us out of our very inheritance. Because it looks like what God did. It acts and behaves kind of like what God did. But I promise you, it's not what God established. It's something less. And so many of us, even in our natural lives, we fall into these very same traps. We get tricked by something that's shiny, and it sounds good, and it's like, oh yeah, this is the thing to do. No, that's exactly what the enemy wants us to do, is to take down. And we don't know. We don't do this on purpose, most people. So, the Roman Catholic Church has established itself as a trust, and there are trusts that exist where people hold things in trust. It's a private agreement, a private contract, a private membership. And I know there's a lot of modern day churches that don't like to do members because I'm telling you, man, the devil is slick. The enemy is cunning. And there are people, well, we don't do membership because people don't want to, we don't own people and da-da-da. Listen, if you don't have a membership, you're not a church. I'm going to tell you something lawfully. If your church does not have membership, you're not a real church. So I know we're trying to be modern and we're trying to be hip. We're trying to be contemporary and we want to be relevant. We don't call it membership. We call it, we have partners and we have this. All that stuff sounds good. But when it comes to law and legality, these words matter. So you're not viewed at the same level. Man, let me tell y'all something. So because the Roman Catholic Church is so big, right? Entities around the world are not allowed to discriminate against clergymen who are dressed in certain attire. I'm telling you this from first-hand experience, first-hand knowledge. When I fly, if I fly with regular clothes on, you just get treated like everybody else. If I fly and travel with clericals on, right, with a collar or a collarette or something like that, and a suit and tie, I get treated a little bit better. Because I think they understand, like certain, like Roman Catholic bishops and priests and stuff don't wear certain types of collars. Certain churches do. So like the Episcopal Church, the Anglican Church, they do full collars. But the Romans usually have the collarette. They have like the seminarian collar, different things. Like we can get into all that type of stuff anyway. That's protocol and blah, 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 right? Patrimony and how you dress and how whatever else. But when I wear a cassock, a specific kind of cassock, when I get to the airport, and you can ask my wife because she was with me. And I told her, I said, the first flight going, we wore regular clothes and we were treated a certain way. Not necessarily bad, but they just kind of like, they're short. When I wore that cassock and came out, I had on my cross. I had all my stuff. I went through the wand beeping and everything else, and they let me go. They put us on the shortest line. We got the best treatment. They upgraded stuff for us. All kind of stuff happens when I'm dressed as a clergyman. Why? Because as a clergyman, I am an ambassador. If they think you're part of the Roman Catholic Church, you are an ambassador of a foreign nation state. You are an ambassador. It says if gangs in the streets have members, so can the church. You get the applause. You get the applause. I'm going to do the sound effect. I got sound effects for you guys. You get the applause, my brother. He says, yes, you get almost the royal treatment when you wear certain clothing. Not almost. I'm a first-hand witness that you do. Not almost. They will upgrade seats. They will put you in the VIP. They will do everything because you are considered an ambassador of a foreign nation. But the churches in America will never be seen like that. There is a certain level of diplomatic immunity that used to come with being a clergyman and part of certain churches. The church used to be a safe haven. It was what's the word? Not just a safe haven. It was asylum. During the Revolutionary War, at the time back in the day, people used to be able to run into churches and the armies would not come in there. Any kind of police forces that they developed over time could not get into the churches. There was asylum there. People could go to the church and hide. They could go to the churches. It was sanctuary, period. The Roman Catholic Church is seen as a sovereign nation state. Because of how they are established. They are established under a certain kind of law. So they are equal. Let me explain that word equal, right? They are an equal opposing force to any world government. Y'all don't want to talk about it because y'all don't like the Roman Catholic Church. But they got some stuff right. They are an equal opposing force. So there are certain things that their members, whether or not they live up to it, definitely their clergymen have access to. It is not like, bro, you saying like, look, he said a sanctuary city. Yes, that's what churches were, like sanctuary cities. The Roman Catholic Church is an embassy. It's not like. They have an embassy. If you are a clergyman in the Roman Catholic Church, you are an ambassador. And that's how all churches should be established. But you can't be established like that if you are a 501c3. You are not equal or opposing to the government. You are subsidiary to the government. You are beneath them. And they threaten you with taking your status of taxes and whatever else because you don't know the law. So people say, oh, no, I don't want to do this. I can't do that because I don't want to lose my tax-exempt status. Do you know the Catholic Church it's not tax-exempt. It is not taxable. There's a difference. There's a difference in an entity being tax-exempt and an entity being non-taxable. There are certain entities in the United States of America that can never be taxed because of the way that they're established and the status or the jurisdiction that they operate within. So anything that operates in the air, ecclesiastical jurisdiction under God's law cannot ever be taxed. And because they see the government as something that God has sanctioned in the Bible, the government is never taxed. I feel like I'm preaching. I see y'all on there. I got like 12 people. Tell me where you from. Put it in the comments. I want to see it. Tell me where you're from. Listen, let's have a conversation. He says, churches, yes, that's right. The churches were basically safe houses or sanctuary city as the brother. That's all it was. Amen. Thank you for listening. I hope that y'all will take this and share this. He says, you on one, my brother. I'm loving it. The God tells us. It said, don't think more of yourself highly and conversely too lowly than you should think. We as a church entity have to change the way we see ourselves in this legal system. In fact, we have to get out of the legal system. Oh, as soon as I said there's 12 of y'all here, Some of them jumped off. Now we're down to 9. It's okay. Hey, what's going on, Pastor McComb? God bless you, man. Bishop, yes, sir. Atlanta in the house. Pastor McCombs, God bless you. I hope this is going to help. Hey, Reverend Sandra, thank you. So that's why the church must be placed in a trust. Listen, I'm about to get to it. I'm about to break it down. I'm about to break it down now. So the Roman Catholic Church is established as a trust. So what happens is, in law, remember, legality has to deal with assumption, what they assume, what they presume, and what is hearsay. Right? Hearsay is basically what they can make up, what somebody said. That's legality. Lawful is truth and fact, and truth and fact are not tried in court. Assumption, presumption, and hearsay. And you have to rebut those things. You have to fight them. You have to say that's not what it is. And because if you don't, it becomes truth and fact. That's how the legal system works. So they can make up stuff about people and lie on you and all sorts of stuff like that. And if you don't know how to rebut it properly and to properly establish or correct your status and your standing, it will be established as truth and fact. And that's how people get in trouble, because they don't understand how the system works. They don't understand lawful, meaning God's ultimate law, and they don't understand legality, means the law that man created trying to imitate God. So if your church is 501c3, you have a lower status than actual ecclesiastical jurisdiction. You now have a terrestrial jurisdiction, and you are a creation of the state, meaning of the government. They have created your entity. They have created it. So now, we can and have the ability to correct our status. Because even if you just start a church, it's allowed. I say it's allowed. We can go and start a church and not have a 501c3, right? You can just have a church. Anybody who gives to you will automatically be able to get the exemption letters and all that kind of stuff if you do that. If you choose to operate that way, listen to what I'm saying. If you choose to operate that way, yes, you can give them exemption letters and they can get exemptions and tax breaks and stuff like that from donating to your church. Yes, but the IRS and the government is automatically assumption and presumption and hearsay. They're going to automatically assume, presume, and think that you are operating as a 501c3. Automatically. So when you go into a court, you go into any situation, the IRS views your church file, you are automatically seen as a 501c3. That's fact. That's the reality. They see you that way. It is your responsibility as a leader, as a pastor, as a bishop, whoever is over the entity, to correct their error. It is our responsibility to correct the error and to say, no, I am not a 501c3. Now, like I said, I'm a fan of the 508 because the 508 existed before the 501c3. That was the statute, however it was set up, it was a 508 C1A. That's what all churches were automatically considered before 501c3. And being a 508 C1A allowed them to be sanctuary buildings, and their clergymen had what we call immunity, a limited immunity. Meaning, of course, you can't rob, steal, you can't kill anybody or whatever else, but you were not subject to statutory law. Statutory law means statute, code, and policy. Now, here's the funny part. Here's the interesting part. As a 508c1A, you actually don't have to do anything outside of declare that that's what you are. This is what people don't understand about law. It has to do with correcting an error, and making a declaration. You declare, this is who we are. I'm sorry, you're mistaken. We are not a 501c3, so don't treat me like a 501c3. This is who we are. But if you have registered as a 501c3, you can't do that because you are one. So you need to dissolve that entirely. dissolve it, close it down, and start your church without it. Or continue your church without it. Close down the 501c3. Turn in the paper, say it's over. We no longer have a non-for-profit organization, because a non-for-profit organization can be a satanic organization as well. So just because you have a 501c3 don't mean that it is automatically a church. It is a non-for-profit organization. It is not automatically a church. Yet a church that is automatically a church is what they call churches, conventions of churches, associations of churches, and that type of stuff, who establish themselves with an agreement or by a private charter, bylaws, constitutions, however some people call it, canons, whatever that is, and they create what's called a trust. That's what the canons of the church are. This is how we are deciding how we are going to be governed. But if you're a 501c3, you are decided how you're governed by the rules of 501c3. That's it. That's how it works. You have to correct the status. In this season, we need to correct the status of the church. We need to correct the status of the church in America specifically. I see some of y'all. Hey, what's going on, my brother Dylan? It's been a long time, man. I hope all is well, brother. We need to correct the status of our churches, because in the time coming, people will be looking for asylum, and the government can come and kick your door right in. Boom! And walk in. And you're going to say, no, y'all can't come in. That's what they're doing it now. They're doing it. They've done it already, where they go into churches and pull people out. Why? Because you're a 501c3 and they have jurisdiction over you. They come in and arresting pastors because pastors don't understand that they're ambassadors of the kingdom of heaven before they are citizens of a country. It don't feel good, but it is what it is. It don't feel good, but it is what it is. We are ambassadors of a kingdom before we are citizens of a country. And if not, that's why we get treated the way we get treated, because they don't see us as ambassadors. Listen to me. I know people don't like them because how they do things and what has happened. But why do you think the Roman Catholic Church has not just been completely decimated by all of these accusations and stuff against them? When you have a certain level of immunity, do you know how much it takes to actually charge someone with a crime? This is where we get in the law about habeas corpus, meaning show me the body. I'm telling you, I've been studying law for a long time. I refuse to go and be a bar lawyer. I refuse to do it. But I've been studying law for a long time. Studying the United States Code, the Uniform Commercial Code, banking law, contract law, all that kind of stuff. Constitutional law, I've been studying it. When you have a certain level of immunity, that's where the thing habeas corpus comes from. It means to show me, produce a body. Meaning, if I'm being charged for something, you have to show evidence. You can't, hearsay goes out the window. Assumption and presumption go out the window at a certain status and a certain standing. And if they cannot produce people with a first-hand testimony, a first-hand knowledge, experience of the thing, there's no case. I'm telling y'all what is. This is how the law works. This is how. So churches who become 501c3s and who set up them and think because we want to get grants and we want to have, you have literally gone into bed with the government and you've given up your right to be completely autonomous and to be completely an opposite opposing force against a wicked government. You have actually laid down with them and started having kids. You've laid down, you've gotten to bed with them and became intimate with their benefits and their privileges. Oh, we'll give you grants, we'll give you this, and we'll make sure you have that. Let us now politicians are coming and preaching in the pulpits as if what they're saying is gospel. Jesus help us. Jesus help us. To have politicians come and stand in the pulpit as if what they're saying is actually the law of God. And their agenda is God's agenda. I'm sorry, I hate to disappoint you, but your politicians they don't care. They get paid. These judges, lawyers, they get kickbacks for this stuff. This is how they make their money. Off of unsuspecting people, specifically those of us who call ourselves Christians and whatever else. We just kind of, I don't know, it's like, what? The Holy Ghost don't make you dumb. It's supposed to make you wise. It's supposed to make you wake up. Yet we'd rather be popular. We'd rather have connections, right? We'd rather be connected. Listen, I'm not saying that you can't have the ear of certain high status politicians, but there's a way to have that. You should have their ear as an ambassador and a prophet from a kingdom and a separate government. Not as a hireling or underling or somebody that they're over. I know it's tight. It's tight, but it's right. Yeah. If you want to give something, Bishop Wayne Jr., I appreciate it. I know I'm talking good, and I know this is strong for some people, and some people, we have been so brainwashed and tied to this realm and tied to what is happening around us that we actually struggle to let go of the things because it's comforting to us. Well, what happens to my church? What happens to my status? Do we lose this? Do we lose that? Blah, 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 blah. How far am I from Minnesota? I'm not that far. Well, actually, no, I am quite far. I'm in New York, but that's only a plane right away. I'll hop in a car and drive. Like, it don't matter to me, brother. That don't matter to me. He said, I wouldn't be a lawyer either. The system is way too broken at its core. Another reason why churches should be trust instead of see. Period. Hey, my brother. Yeah. I'm listen, you let me know where I need to be, man. That's all. So we have allowed ourselves to be tricked by lawyers. That's what they do. All lawyers do are they're mediators of exchange. Oh, cool. Yes, sir. Look me up. Hit me up, man. Let me know. We'll connect for sure. Yes, sir. So what lawyers do is they are tort attorneys. Like they twist, they contort things. They take from one to give to the other. That's their job. Take from one to give to another. They're mediators and all these other things. And I don't want to get into that because I'm not here to bash lawyers. I have cousins and friends who are lawyers, and I think that they mean well. They just don't know. Like, some just don't know. They haven't been exposed to this type of information. And they think that legal means that's what God intended. It's not. Legal is what man intends. Lawful is what God established. And if you want to have a lawful church and a lawful existence under the authority, the ecclesiastical authority of God and what he has given, the dominion he has given to man, then we need to leave man's stuff alone. We need to come out from under, come out from among them. Be separate. We keep screaming and preaching about separation of church and state. But it is what it is. Hey, God bless you, my brother. Thank you for joining me, man. Thank you for joining me. Absolutely. And please come back and comment on whatever else, any other parts. But listen, so what the churches need to do is to let go of their 501c3s, stop worrying about tax-exempt status, stop worrying about their grants and everything else. Because, listen to me, if you are a trust, if you have a trust, if the church is established as a trust, why do you think, again, the Roman Catholic Church can still take donations? Now, the Roman Catholic Church has set up 501c3s to benefit them, like they have the Catholic Charities and they have all these other things. I'm not going to get into detail about some of those, but they set up 501c3s, but the church is not a 501c3. The church is established as a trust. And with a trust, you can establish yourself as a nation, sovereignly, as a nation and a state. That's how America was actually founded. America is based on trust law. The Declaration of Independence is a trust. The Constitution is a trust. The Articles of Confederation were a trust. It's where people came together to create something. And they're governed by their own laws. So if God created the church and we're governed by the laws of God, that is the trust. It's between us and God. So why does the government have anything to say about what we say or what we don't say or where we can be or cannot be? Like last year, these guys, pastors and churches being shut down for feeding homeless people. That's what we've been called to do. That's what God called us to do. It's to feed the homeless, to feed the hungry, to clothe the naked, and to visit the orphans and the widows. But government has shut down pastors who are doing these things because they can. And we think we're doing the right thing. And we've just had the wool pulled over our eyes. That's it. So we gotta correct our status. We gotta correct our standing. We have to correct which jurisdiction we are a part of. And if we are a part of the ecclesiastical jurisdiction, then we got to get out of being afraid of losing benefits and privileges from the government so we can have the rights that were given to us by God. And this is beyond America. This is worldwide. This stuff is recognized around the world. So y'all pastors, American, evangelical, or not, Orthodox or Anglican or whatever. This idea of patriotism and being attached to America has to go. Quickly. Our allegiance is to the wrong jurisdiction. Our allegiance to America is going to mess us up. Now, I know some people are like, death to America. No, I'm not there. I'm not there. You can have that. You can keep that and whatever else. But I'm telling you, our allegiance to America is going to be the destruction of the church. Because our allegiance should be to the kingdom first, to the ecclesiastical government that God established in his word. Even America acknowledges that. There is a law that says the Bible is. In fact, it's actually the 1611 King James Version that the Bible is the law of God. It is the highest form of law in America and recognized around the world. Yet they created their own laws and made churches subject to them by them becoming non-for-profit organizations. It's trickery. The devil is cunning. He don't come right out and do stuff and tell you, I'm gonna make you give up your ecclesiastical authority in the world and in the earth to take something lesser. He makes it look shiny and bright and big. Oh, this is good for me. I get these benefits and these privileges and that. When you get benefits and privileges, you are giving up rights for them. They don't tell you that, but that is exactly what is happening. So now we have churches that are no longer asylums, where people who are hurting and broken can't run into them because the government or anybody else can come right in after them because they're looked at as you're looked at as a business, as an organization, not a church. You're looked at as a lower entity. Especially when we want to run our churches like businesses. Then what's the difference? If you run your church like a business, you'll be treated like a business. Because guess what? Our government is a business. And there's laws that state if the government wants to behave like an organization or a corporation, it must operate like one under law. The same thing goes for churches. So the government gave up being an actual de jure government for de facto government. I don't know. Y'all don't know what these words are. Go look them up. De jure. D-E-J-U-R-E. The other one is de facto. D-E-F-A-C-T-O. These are legal and lawful terms that you need to understand. So the church is operating in de facto. And de facto means fake. It's not the real thing. It's a facsimile. It's a copy. It's not the authentic version of it. We got to get back to that. We got to get back to the authentic thing, the thing that God established in the world. In this season, I'm going to be talking a lot more about this because I feel like this is part of the call. This is part of the call, and God has given me this information, this knowledge, the wisdom. I spent years, my father and I, my brothers, we spent years studying this stuff because we wanted to be. I hated feeling like I was a slave and beholden to something. And that's not the way it's supposed to be, especially with the church. The church, we are ambassadors. And we've lost our power and strength because we've decided to become lower than what God established. So being a church is not enough. I need to be a business. I need to be an organization. I need to be a corporation. The church is the highest authority in the land, y'all. And if you don't like something that's happening, if the church is not in place, there's nothing to keep the government at bay. That's how it used to be. Until, again, church became this legal thing. And that's where the Roman Catholic Church did some stuff. They became their own sovereign nation state. And they began to function like a government, going on wars and doing the crusades and all that kind of stuff. No, that ain't it. They ain't get that right. That was wrong. But that's why they can be so rich and not pay taxes. And people say, oh, we should tax the Catholic Church. There's no possible. They're ignorant. There's no way to tax them. They existed before the government that wants to tax them. How are you going to tax something that was here already? I was here before you. How are you going to tax me? And that's what we need to understand as a church. They can't take away your tax-exempt status. Or I'll change that. They can take away your tax-exempt status if they gave it to you. But they cannot take away tax-exempt status from something, an entity that God created that is not taxable to begin with. Because it existed before the government that is attempting to tax it. Don't take my word for it. Go look this stuff up. Don't take my word for it. Go look it up. I'm not telling you nothing that's not... I read this stuff in books. Go get you a Black's Law Dictionary. Black's Law Dictionary. Black's Law Dictionary. If you can get your hands on a second or first through the 5th edition, good job. I think I have like 2nd, 3rd, and 4th or something like that. But between those things, the definitions change. And here's the thing about law, because it's dynamic, or the legality of these things, because they're dynamic, meaning they're always shifting and moving, they can change definitions without ever losing the original meaning. And because we have several jurisdictions, they can apply whichever meaning they want to in different jurisdictions. They can apply the words. They have their own definitions. There's another book. It's called the Style Manual book. It actually teaches them how to write legalese. Y'all don't know that. There's a whole... Legalese is a real language. And if you don't understand what is being said, they will put you in a jurisdiction that you don't belong to, and you fall prey to the jurisdiction because you don't know the law. And that's why they made a law that ignorance of the law is no excuse. Hey, what's going on, my brother? God bless you. Pastor Paul. Amen. I remember you, sir. Listen, we have to get back to who God has actually created us to be. Get out of this mindset that we need the government, that the government is good for us, and the government... And again, I'm not against government, but I believe that government has its place, and God's church has its own government. Chicago Manual of Style, is that the same thing? Not quite, but it's a book called Style Manual. It's called the Style Manual, and it teaches them how to write legalese in a certain way. So this is a language that lawyers use and paralegals and legal people use to create documents. They'll use words that don't mean what you and I think they mean. So, but no, Chicago Manual is not, I'd have to see it. I don't know if I haven't seen that one, but it's a book called Style Manual. I don't know if I have a copy of it in PDF. It's probably like 7 or 8 years old now. If I can find it, I'll send it to you. So we have these churches, we have these entities, we have all of this stuff, and God is like, oh yeah, I mean, and we're like, God, you got to come do something, or we want to go out and protest and this and that, the third, and we have no weight behind us. And because the churches are so splintered, and everybody's doing their own thing, and everybody's gone their own way, and nobody wants to be unified with anybody else or whatever else, then it's called divide and conquer. And now you literally, like, I have pastors who have attacked me because I'm coming against 501c3. And I'm like, that's called Stockholm Syndrome. You have actually, you are now empathizing and protecting your abuser. You're so out of the way things God set them up and the way they're supposed to be, that you actually come to the rescue of those who have enslaved you and took away the very rights that God gave to you. Took away the power that God gave you. This runs deep, because now we're talking about things that have to do with marriage, that have to do with your children. All of this runs deep. You remember, back in the day, marriages were recorded by writing them in the family Bible. And that's how it was done. It was recorded at the county by a judge. They documented it. That's a lawful marriage. It was a lawful marriage. You get all rights, benefits, and privileges. But what happened is they decided, let's get these pastors to get licensed with the state to perform marriages. Do you know that legal marriages are patented? There is a patent for legal marriages. And God is not in the equation. You can go to the U.S. Patent Office and look up marriage. It's between the state, which means government, the man, and the wife. Yes, also births and deaths and all these other things. Those things were documented in the family Bible because that's the highest form of law, the Bible. But what they did was they created the marriage certificate, marriage licenses. Now you're asking the government for permission to do something that God established. Y'all don't understand? Do you understand what's happening here? God said, marriage. This is what matrimony is. Matrimony is the making of a mother. Holy matrimony, a sacrament of the church, that the church establishes a godly reality in the earth. The highest form of law and governance. And we decide to say, nope, I'm going to go to the Justice of Peace, or I'm going to go to the county and get a license, and I'm going to ask them for permission to get married. Sure, I'll do it in a church, but I want the legal benefits and privileges. So we lose the right to own ourselves and our own children as property, and now we go into contract with the government and we become subservient to them, which is why they can come take your kids and all this other kind of stuff. It goes deep. God bless you, my brother. Thank you for joining me. This stuff runs deep. I've been studying it for years. And there are people, I'm telling you, people have had their children taken. People have had their homes taken and all this other stuff because we don't understand. It starts off with the church. Once the church stepped down, everything else just stepped down. Everything else started falling. Including us here in America dealing with certain things. We're so proud to be citizens of the United States, but citizen is no different than like a church who is under God's law stepping down to 501c3. That's like, hey, I made you a man, a woman, in my likeness and image. A citizen is the government's likeness and image, not God's. A citizen is the government's likeness and image. So you're expected to toe the line of the government. And they don't care about your God. Because in fact, you've abandoned your God for them. You don't have to believe me, but that's how they operate. That's how they look at it. That's how it's viewed. That's how it's called assumption, presumption, and hearsay. The enemy is cunning. He is tricky. He has taken the things that God established and made a cheap carbon copy. And because we don't have wisdom, we're afraid to stand up. We're afraid to be ostracized and looked at funny. We're afraid to raise our voices. We're afraid that somebody's going to come for us. Then we decided to take steps backwards and lay down and not stand up for what God established because of fear. This has nothing to do with Republican, Democrat, or none of this stuff because they're all part of it. All of them. I don't care what side you're on. They're all part of it. So if we want to be a patriot, let's focus on being a patriot of the kingdom and being patriotic to that nation. The holy nation that God has made us part of. The royal priesthood that we are. That's who we should be patriotic. That's what we should be patriotic toward. I've been on here for an hour. I'm about to get off. If you'd like to donate, help me out. Yes, I have a job, I work, but donations do help. Help with technology, with things. We're going to be doing some seminars here in Long Island teaching this stuff. I'm going to be helping people break free. This is what God called me to. Salvation is holistic. It involves the whole man. It's not just your soul. It starts with it, but then the rest of you needs to be saved as well. We need to be saved in our thinking and our understanding of the world. We need to be transformed. So, if you would, please donate. I'd appreciate it. God bless you. I'm going to be doing more about this particular subject. But please join me tomorrow. I will be having our first in-person service for Epiphany right here, whatever venue you're watching at. I would love for you to join us there. And I really do appreciate you being here with me. I hope something I said will kind of open your eyes to some things and go look. Let me tell you something, man. Go online, find Black's Law Dictionary PDF. See if you can get older editions, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. And then start looking at certain words like person. The words change throughout the editions. The meanings change. The definitions change. And you don't know what definition they're using. They're assuming, presuming, and through hearsay, they're going to tell you, they're going to just say the word and expect you to understand the definition. So when you go into court and you deal with these people, you have to actually set your own. Here's what I mean when I say these words. And they have to go by that. Because that's how the lawful is set up. So thank y'all for joining me. God bless you. Y'all have been absolutely wonderful. Yeah. And I love you. And I will see you on the next live video. So God bless you. Again, I'm here to help. I'm only here to help. I'm here to challenge you. I'm here to push you to the next level. I'm here to help you understand what's really going on and how to transition out of being a less than thing to really operating at the level that God has established for us to work inside of. So I love you guys. I hope this helps somebody. And I'll talk to you soon. I can't dance, by the way. I can make people dance. I'm a musician, but I was never a dancer. God bless y'all. I love you. And I will see you on the next episode. Hopefully tomorrow. So come check us out at Epiphany. God bless.